Hey folks, so today we are going to be making this. Well, maybe not exactly this, but we are going to be making a clown pattern hair jig, which will imitate this jerkbait you see here. So stick around and let's get to tying. Okay, to start we have a red 3/8 ounce swim bait jig head in the vise, and I'm rolling with some red 210 denier flat wax. And we'll just get to starting with our base here. Give that a snip. And so for this jig, you basically need, we got some gray bucktail, some Chartreuse bucktail, and then we have some gray saddle hackle feathers, and you guessed it, some Chartreuse saddle hackle feathers, and then also some crystal flash. And that'll act as sort of the silver that you see in the jerkbait as well. Okay, so I'm just going to tie in my saddle hackle feathers here for tail. So I'm tying in one gray and one Chartreuse on each side. And ideally I just want the Chartreuse to come out a little bit further than the gray, just to give it that little bit of extra color in the tail. And I will measure that up, and that looks about right. And we'll give that a few wraps, and then we'll do our other side. And we'll do the same thing. Make sure that yeah, that looks all right. Measure that so that they're pretty much the same length. And we'll give that a few wraps. And then we'll wrap it all the way down. Yeah. And I think that looks good enough for what we're doing here. And I'll give all these little feather ends a snip. And if you wanted to, you could trim up all this other stuff too, but it doesn't really matter for, it won't, yeah, I'll just cinch some of that down with the thread instead. It's not a big deal. Okay, so I'm ready to tie in my bucktail. And on some lures like jerkbaits or other lures that have clown patterns, what is sometimes the case, you might see like a whitish or a very dull gray on the belly, or you might see the silver on the belly, or you might see a little bit of chartreuse and silver. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put some gray bucktail down the belly, and then I'll just put a little bit of chartreuse right at the head here. And I'm just going to cut some bucktail here and start tying that in. Okay. And we'll make sure we get that all in there properly. And we'll do some more. So as you notice, I don't have a rotary vise. So eventually I'll have to take the vise out of the jig and flip it upside down. It's a little bit of a pain in the butt, but it is what it is until I get a better vise. So we'll put some more gray on there. Just gonna make sure we get all the loose hairs out of there. So it's a really simple jig to tie, really, and doesn't require a lot of materials or colors or anything like that. But it is highly effective. This pattern of jig here was probably my #1 producing jig for smallmouth for me last year. It beat your classic black marabou and all that kind of stuff. It really, really produced for me all year round. It was a good all year round producer for me. I don't know exactly why it outshined some of the other ones, but it did. And so why not roll with it then? All right, we'll just cinch that down. And I'm not worried right now about getting coverage all the way around. I don't necessarily want coverage all the way around because the Chartreuse is going to go on the other side anyway. But as long as I get coverage of the gray on the belly here and then on the sides, that's essential. So now I'm just going to take a little bit of the Chartreuse hair, give that a snip, and I don't want too much, like I don't want a full thing. So I'll probably just go like just a little bit of it. It's essentially just for a bit of an accent. And we'll snip that. Even that might be a bit much, but we're gonna roll with it. And I just kind of want it just down, right down the belly like that. And we'll tie that in. And maybe we'll trim away some of these fibers here now too while we're at it. Okay, so now I have my jig flipped up the other way, and we're going to tie in some of the Chartreuse for the top side. And I'm just going to grab a bit here off my bucktail. Take out some of those loose strands. And split the hook as best we can here. If not, we'll sort it out later. Maybe I'll give that a snip. I really need to get to sharpen my scissors up here. They're a little dull on me. And we'll just tie that in, making sure that we're staying sort of directly on top of the head, on top of the shank of the hook rather. And not, I don't want to wrap this around too much onto the sides or anything like that. I just want to stay right on top. And we'll cinch that down. Yeah, it's looking pretty good all the way around here, I'd say. And now that I have that in, I'm just going to take her out and flip her back over the right way. And then I'll just continue my wraps like that. And we'll give these a bit of a snip here too, making sure that we don't cut our thread. And maybe what we'll do is we'll add just a bit more gray on the sides. I don't want to lose that. I don't want to have it too much Chartreuse. I don't want to lose that gray in there. So I'm just going to tie in a few hairs more of gray on each side of the jig. Doesn't have to be a lot, but just a little bit in case I've come around too far with the Chartreuse. Get that loose one out of there. Yeah. So I'm just tying that directly on the side. And I'm going to move that around a little bit. And then we'll do the same thing for the other side. Starting to get a lot of brown in my gray here. The underside of this gray bucktail is all, as you can see, is all sort of brown. So I'm starting to lose all the good gray fibers here, but we're making do, I think. Okay. And then, yeah, I just want to tie that in just right there. All right, and we'll worry about all this little fuzz stuff a little later on. We don't need to worry about that right now. But we'll just give this a few tight wraps. Make sure that's in there. Okay, so now all we need to do is tie in our crystal flash, and we're just going to tie a few strands on each side. Okay, so I have 3 strands here, big long strands, so I have that folded in half, and so I'll just measure on one side here. I want it coming just to maybe a smidge past the bucktail. I can always trim that off later as well. So we'll just tie in this first side here, making sure that doesn't get wrapped up in my bobbin. So we'll do maybe 2 kind of looser wraps, and then I'll carry that over to here. And wrap those in as well. And then we'll just pull those like that and give those a snip about there. And same thing on this side. Give those a snip about there. And now we're basically just ready to fix up this collar a little bit, and then we'll be done. Okay, so we have our collar on. Now all we need to do is give it a quick whip finish and put some resin on, and then we'll be ready to roll. And we'll just do a couple more. And there you go. Give that a snip. And we'll get some of this UV finish on here. I have the thick stuff. I figure this collar is wide enough that I can put the thick stuff on. Now again, the rotary vise would be really nice in this situation, where I could just rotate it with the brush here. But yeah. And then we'll just give that a quick blast with the light. Okay, so there you have it, folks. That's a side-by-side, the jerkbait and the hair jig. Give it a shot. Let me know how it works for you. It was highly effective for me last year during the open water season, and I'm hoping it'll do the same this season. Take care, and thanks for watching.